an experience with the speaker from the audience's point of view, they probably put us on a pedestal, even earlier in our careers, even the fact that we can stand on stage and speak and not forget what we're saying, or even if we can, we have a good recovery. And from my very first talks, what I did naturally, and I encourage everyone, analyze what you do that works and try and put a name on it. I would schmooze, and I call it the schmooze factor. In other words, you wander around with the audience and you shake hands and you become a person to them on the same level before you get on stage or start speaking. And then two, when it comes to paid engagements, the best advice I can give, not only to deliver an unforgettable experience, but to also get rebooked, is to go early and stay late. When in the days when I was mostly a keynote speaker, and of course being single, I could be on the road a lot longer. I used to say I use single as being a strategy to build my business because people with children felt they had to go home. So I would go at the beginning of the conference. I didn't charge extra. The group did pay for my hotel rooms, but there's nothing like sitting next to people in the audience and ask them questions about their company and what was going on and how they felt, and then put it back into my presentation. So I would quote them. Another way that you can create an unforgettable experience, and this only works if you're there early, I would listen to what the executives and other speakers said, and I have this phrase in my head. What does that remind me of? What does that remind me of? And so I would have the framework of my speech that I had planned to give. And I would take their comments, and often it would remind me of content in my back pocket that I hadn't considered putting in my speech. And it is amazing when an executive says, Patricia, you remembered what everybody said more than we do ourselves. And especially if you're going to be the last speaker on the convention, or the last, which I frequently was, I would recap the entire convention.
Wow.
The key points as well as my own. Now, let's take it to a next level. For example, if you look at the program, and those days it was more a paper program or an outline, it wasn't online in those days. You'd find out. So I remember once I was opening a conference and Terry Paulson was closing it. So we, of course, are pals. So I would say, Terry, what are you going to say? What's going to be your opening line? And how can we do a match? So I was day 1 and he was day 4. And my concluding remarks just set him up to how he was going to open. So it looked as if we always worked as a duo. And over the years, by collaborating with other speakers, even if I didn't know them ahead of time, the audience and the clients often say, well, how often do you perform with John and Mary? You actually didn't know John or Mary before you took the initiative to make the connection beforehand. Now, you understand, Darren, this doesn't cost you anything. We all know there are ways that you can invest money to make the experience more, but this is just very simple. Now, here's another way that you can steal the show even when you're not the best speaker.
I love that, stealing the show.
When you're not the best speaker. So, for example, everybody who's heard me speak knows my best client is the American Payroll Association. And this year will be my 20th consecutive convention, working for them at least 5 days at the convention. And Dan Maddox, the executive director, told me about one of my speakers, friends I had recommended. Now, she is a content expert. She's a great speaker, but she she's not on the same level as a lot of the other Hall of Fame and celebrity speakers they have. But instead, when you read the reviews from the attendees, she was their favorite. And that was because she has a certain expertise. I won't mention it because I don't want people to know who she is.
Right.
But she has a certain expertise that she can tell people more about themselves. It's rather like being a fortune teller, except it's got science involved. And because she would be open at the breakouts, the lunch meetings and at the parties where people want to talk to her, and she would give them a personalized analysis using her expertise, people just liked her more. Now, they might have thought, wow, it was great to have Joan Collins on the platform, but they had a personal relationship with my friends, and I guarantee they're still talking about that. So they rate her higher. Now, how do we get rebooked and recommended?
Let me pause you for one split second, Patricia. Somebody commented, by the way, if you're online, and welcome Ian and Kathy and Anita who's joined us. In the top left-hand corner, you can ask a question or you can click on chat, and I'll keep an eye on those questions for Patricia. Patricia, one of the comments that came in is, you're a little close and your chin is getting cut off on the video. There you go, perfect. So thank you, Susan, for that. I appreciate that. And if you're just joining us, this is an unforgettable interview with Patricia Fripp about being unforgettable on the platform. If you don't know Patricia, she's an icon in the industry, past president of NSA. She came over from the UK with $500 in her pocket, didn't know a soul, and she actually started building her hairdressing business by speaking at Rotary clubs and Kiwanis clubs, and she's earned her way to the top of being one of the foremost speaker coaches in the country. I listen to her, and I think you should listen to her. So Patricia, going down to some more specifics of how to be unforgettable, and by the way, I love what you just said, and ironically, behind you is the Golden Gate Bridge, and what we're talking about is building a bridge to make that emotional connection to our audience. And what you also said too, to recap a little bit for people who just joined, is the fact that going early and staying late, not only pressing the flesh, but knowing what the other speakers say. So if there is a similar point, you can piggyback on it and take it to a higher level, and you're not blindsided if somebody, for example, God forbid, stole one of your stories, but you can make sure you're doing a different spin on that. So Patricia Fripp, what else specifically, how can we be unforgettable?
We can be unforgettable by interviewing some of the audience members or the board of directors in advance and personalizing their examples for the industry. Now, what is good about that is that you also develop stories and examples that reinforce your expertise that comes from industries you've never worked in. I'm thinking one with a catalog company. I had 3 classic stories about how employees help drive business. And they were perfect for the speech, except because the principles are universal, I have for decades used the same stories in similar points.
Wow.
Then we take it up one notch, as most of us have PowerPoint these days. And Lenora Billings Harris was the first person I saw do this. She took photographs from the audience. So for example, she spoke at our National Speakers Association of Northern California chapter. And in her PowerPoint, she put photographs of people who were well known in our group. And I'm sitting there thinking, oh, is she going to put my photo? Yeah. And so it was so good. So I took that idea, and another way, now this is getting more complex, but for the American Payroll Association, they have a pre-Congress day. And for about, 12 years, I emceed this pre-Congress day. And I also wrote a customized speech based on the theme. And they had one theme that was a jungle theme. And at the conclusion of my keynote, and this was all triggered from Lenora, they had 50, I think it was 50 speakers on the program. And while we played one of the famous songs from The Lion King, what is that famous song from The Lion King?
The Circle of Life?
Yes. Okay. So at the conclusion, we played The Circle of Life. And while that was going, there was a collage of all the speakers who were on the program. So obviously, that was something that an effect, an experience I created only for that client, that convention once.
Wow. And by the way, Patricia, we just had a question come in. Ian is asking, what's your first keynote topic before you became an executive speaker coach?
And that is the question that comes up for all of us. I'm a great speaker, or I like speaking. What do I talk about? And what Darren and all the champs and I will always tell you is, what is it that you know that would be useful for other people that one day they will pay for? And so my first question to people is, how do you make your living? And I was a men's hairstylist, and I built a very successful small business. And I realized, because I used to think I'm not an expert on anything, then I realized, yes, I am. I am an expert at building a small to medium-sized business. My early programs were how to get, keep, and deserve your customers. And so that was a format. So even when I went to work for much bigger companies, through interviews, I would find out, well, this is what I do to make people feel special. How would that relate to you? So you see, you're building out your chunks of content with personalized examples that come from their industry. And so it goes on. But how to get, keep, and deserve your customers, and how to promote your business, high tech, low tech, and no tech. And if you started, Darren, it was no tech, and when it became technical. Any more questions before I go to some of my next pithy points?
Checking the chat. Not at the moment. So give us another specific strategy for being unforgettable.
This is a specific strategy which makes your clients feel good, and that is, if you are a client of that firm, get them to introduce you by, for example, with AAA insurance, by your account number, by United Airlines, by your frequent flyer number, for Wells Fargo. Now, maybe you're not going to give your whole account, but
especially if the people work there and have access to it.
Yes, exactly. So sometimes then you are a client, and in that case you would say, and it's how you write your introduction. So Patricia Fripp is this. That's not why we hired her. Patricia Fripp is also that. And that's not why we hired her. Patricia Fripp is this. Not why we hired her. Although she is a superb presenter, we hired her to tell us how we can connect better with clients just like her. Please welcome account number such and such.
Nice.
So again, that was a little different. And then when most of the clients that hire us, we are not a customer of theirs. So there are some circumstances, and I will certainly talk about this at Lady and the Champ, so I'm not going to give away the whole thing, but you become a client and you report on the experience. Then there is another level also, which expand in Lady and the Champs, and that is to be a mystery shopper. And that is very easy. And not only when you become a mystery shopper, can you be, with very little effort, an industry expert? And now that opens you up beyond this one memorable experience. It's then easier, especially with state associations, to recommend you to a lot more. Oh, people thought she worked in our business.
So, Patricia, for people who don't know what you mean by mystery shopper, they might know for someone who works in a retail store. Explain a little bit about what you mean by that.
Well, a mystery shopper, and it can work in retail. So, for example, you look at, well, one, I was speaking for a product company, for a hair product company. So I would go and have my hair done at some of the salons where their stars worked. Not only would I buy and use their products, I would have that experience. Another time, for example, several times I've worked with direct sales companies that sell party plan. So one, I would go to the parties where they were selling the products, and I would, of course, buy a lot. I would become a customer that way. Then the example I will use at Lady and the Champs is with Bartlett Tree Company. There are other examples where you can, for example, I work with a makeup company. And so I went and bought their products, and then I would say, you know, I usually use Laura Mercier. However, am I wearing Hourglass? You tell me what I'm wearing. And what color is it? So again, that's not difficult to do. It might be more complex with some other companies, but even with large corporations, it's amazing who you know who does do business with them, because you can see by a lot of their references. And then the next level, so you might be a customer, you can become a customer, you can become a mystery shopper, and this you can do even in car businesses or recreational vehicles. You can go to a showroom and pretend to be a client and see how they treat you, especially if your subject is good and bad customer service.
Yeah, and obviously when we do something like that, it can be powerful when we're now reporting, and now hopefully that person gives you good customer service. And if they don't, how would you handle that?
Well, and this has happened multiple times, because remember, I've been doing this on and off for decades. One, well, you praise and mention the names of the companies who do well. You give specific examples without mentioning the names or the locations of another. For example, simple, I'm working for an outlet store, malls, and I go in and I'm buying some socks, and I said to the young person, now, there are two socks, they look the same. Can you tell me the difference between the $8 socks and the $10 socks? And you know what he said? $2. You know me, Darren. I love a sales pitch. I'll spend the $2 more. Just give me a reason. Give me the story. Make me feel it. Look at the stitch. But give me a story that's worth $2. So, of course, I told them that. Well, the management rolls their eyes. That people would... Now, in that case... Now, you understand, in that case, it's the management's fault, because they're not well trained. They are not given the sort of training that many of us could be giving. And now that just flashed on an example that I hadn't thought. Now, you know, it flashed in my head and is a great example. Now, flashback. It's my age, Darren. You've been doing this for 4 years.
Patricia, we've got 2 questions,
Yeah.
And maybe the flash will come back. So first, Anita is asking, she said, "Hi, Patricia, I'm new in the business. What type of introduction can the client use? Thank you."
The introduction to introduce you as a speaker?
Yes, I believe that's what she's asking.
All right. Well, the question, what you would do is you'd, of course, write it yourself. And what you want to do is make it sound good, but not too good. You know, I mean, you can't lie in it.
Correct.
It's always better. See, the advantage of being new is that the chances are people haven't heard of you. And when you're halfway decent, they think, oh, that's better than I expected. The disadvantage, and I'm sure Darren would agree, and so would the champs, is when people know about you, you've been around a long time, you've heard, oh, this person, oh, is so wonderful. You can't, you could perhaps live up to being as good as you were last time. You might not be as good as people's exaggerated memory of it, which does bring up a specific example. Once I was speaking for Unigo Travel, and Darren, you know, sometimes the angels descend from heaven. You got the right speaker, the right speech, the right audience, and it's beyond that working. It's some magic in the air. It's whether it's the moon or whatever dynamics. It was masterful. And I walked off stage, and the boss said, "Patricia, that was so good. Can we book you for next year?" Now, this is where you have to use a little wisdom. Now, that was a little earlier in my career, Darren, when I probably didn't have 5 days of content. And I had given them the best I could give, and it was magic. And I said to her, it was so good, I cannot accept. Book me again in a couple of years. Because, again, the word of mouth, because it was so magical, would have made it difficult for me to match it.
To live up to that, yes.
As it turned out, it was 7 years before they hired me back. Now, if I got to wait 7, I might have said yes, but probably not. By 7 years, they remembered they loved me, but they couldn't remember all my stories, and they couldn't remember, you know.
Yep. Next question, and then I want to wrap it up. I want to honor your time. So Ian asks a question about insurance. He says, what insurance coverage do you recommend as a speaker, i.e. professional, errors and omissions, liability, etc.? Which is a great question. I wouldn't have thought of that one.
And it's totally on subject. Yes, I would say talk to your insurance broker. I am not comfortable giving advice on such a topic because it all depends where you are in your career. So I will.
Sure, and it probably varies from state to state, but it's a good question, Ian. But
ask Mark LeBlanc.
Great question for Mark LeBlanc. Patricia, I want to wind it up. I want to give you ask for one final thought on any other specific idea, strategy on being unforgettable that we haven't touched upon yet.
Well, there are dozens from large until small. One that we both do is we make videos in advance. So you and I both know, Darren, and we work very hard to create an experience and a relationship with our audience before we get there. And video can help do that. And usually you have to educate the audience. And then one is when you get involved in costumes. And when I was younger, I was working for a direct sales company that had lingerie, and they were going to have a fashion show. So I said, oh, please, I want to be in it. So I went in there that lingerie fashion show. I would maybe not offer now, but 20 years ago, that was fun. And Certainly, when you wear a Wonder Woman costume or a rhinestone cowboy outfit, and I will be giving some of those examples at Lady and the Champs, and some really specific, more crystal examples of how you can, one, be a customer, be a mystery shopper, and then how about this? You go to work for the company. And I'm not suggesting you go on the payroll, but there are many jobs you can go and for half a day really walk in the shoes of the majority of the people that are going to be in the audience, and you will be.
And if there's an experience going on at the convention or conference, I spoke for a trucking company once, and they had a trailer truck with almost like a virtual driving a truck. I don't want to say game, but it was like a training tool, and everybody went there. So I made sure I went through it too, so I could have the experience and see how I could tie it in. But I also watched one guy wrecked like 3 times. So I mentioned that in my speech, in fun and not making fun of him. And then somebody else who did really well. So using it as an example, but now it ties into the whole experience that they're part of. So Patricia Fripp, at Lady and the Champs, the Unforgettable Conference, what are you going to be covering there?
Some specific examples of being a customer, of customizing your material in such a way that the meeting planner says you sure showed Zig Ziglar and Mark Victor Hansen how to give a speech. And this is not complicated. Exactly how to do it. Specific examples of how I became an industry expert, and the advice of who George Morrissey really taught me how to do this, and much more that I probably have to leave as a secret.
Well, you've taught us a lot the same way George Morrissey taught you. If you would like to join us for Lady and the Champs, just go to ladyandthechamps.com, and the price is going to go up on February 1st. So take advantage of the early bird advantage now. If you want to join myself, Patricia Fripp, Craig Valentine, Ed Tate, Ford Sakes, Mike Rayburn is going to join us too. I just got confirmation yesterday.
Oh, really?
Yes, and these are all the different programs you'll see, but more details if you go to ladyandthechamps.com. So Patricia Fripp, thanks for joining us. Thanks for being a part of this interview, and most importantly, being the lady who leads the way for Lady and the Champs.
My pleasure.
All right, we'll see you in March in Vegas.
Okay, bye.
Thanks, Patricia.